Good evening and welcome to the rest of the news. We have a tremendous program. There's a lot going on today in the United States. Our special guest today is State Representative Ed Holloway, and we certainly appreciate you being here and helping us figure out what's going on.
Well, I've been following the political process most of my life, and this is a very frightening time in our history. And I just went to a movie that Denise DeSouza has produced, and he's written a book called Hillary's America. And it's a fascinating study that covers a lot of other things that have been into the process for the last several years and very critical of the Clintons. And it's a very serious book, and it's based on actual facts, and he goes through chapter and verse of every aspect of the Democratic Party. And, you know, we've talked about this before, the fact that the Democratic Party that we knew as young years ago is not the same party. It's been hijacked by the socialists and the progressives.
Yeah.
And it's completely controlled by them now, and it's a massive problem. And what we're faced with in this particular election is the future of America as we know it.
That's right. That's right. I saw the movie, and I thought it was fantastic.
Right.
I guess it's still in town, isn't it?
I think it is at 2 or 3 of the locations, and I think it'll be based on the early turnouts that some of the things it'll be spread to several other theaters around the country. So it's something that condenses into about a 2-hour period, several hundred years of history.
Yeah.
And it's a very important thing to understand how we've evolved. And it's been a slow process, and we don't really notice it in our day-to-day lives, but it's going on completely. And the indebtedness that the Americans have, in 2014, they added another $2 trillion. And that, combined with the loss in Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare, all of those combined total about $18 trillion. And it doesn't include those others. And those that have made the projections can say that it's up to about $94 trillion of unfunded liability that the United States is facing. And I thought it was interesting that if you confiscated the wealth of every last man, woman, and child in America, it still wouldn't pay the debt.
Oh, my goodness.
Every last penny. And also in thinking about that, I went back and did a little research and found that the dollar has lost 92 cents out of every dollar since 1913.
Yeah.
So we're in a serious, serious problem. And the continuation of the liberal giveaway programs, free this, free that, is not free. It's costing the taxpayers of America, and they're kicking the can down the road and saying, well, we're going to with it. And the Chinese and other countries that are basically potential enemies have millions and millions of dollars of our debt. They get called at any time.
I remember when a penny postcard was a penny.
Exactly.
Now it's like 30 cents or
Well, my first automobile was under $1,000.
Wow.
And it's amazing because, again, it's a very slow process. It doesn't happen in large chunks at one time. It's slowly, it's insidious, it's like a cancer that continues to grow, and it can very well become fatal.
Well, I think this movie was fantastic. It really explains what's going on in our country today. And Hillary's America.
Right, and how they've changed certain things. And one of the con artist tricks has always been to be, if whatever you're doing, you accuse the other person of doing.
Yeah.
So that confuses and makes it difficult for them to pinpoint you. So you accuse the other side of doing what you're doing. And it's a serious problem. It's growing every day. And I don't know, the convention showed up a lot of the difficulties that are even within the Democratic Party between the socialists under Bernie Sanders and the traditional Democrats' power structure with Hillary Clinton.
I also had the privilege of speaking to Hillary Clinton, and she thanked me for my service. We had a wonderful conversation, and she asked me, and I committed to her that I would serve as a surrogate throughout this campaign so that we could make sure that that she is able to help build on the progress that we've been able to make for the last 8 years. Because we have a lot of work to do. We have so much to do, and we have to make sure that we move forward together in a unified way. We know that the voices in this room that are standing up and being disruptive, we know that that's not the Florida that we know. The Florida that we know is united. The Florida that we know is going to make sure that we continue to create jobs like the 14.8 million jobs that were created under Barack Obama's leadership.
Can I just say to the Bernie or bust people, you're being ridiculous.
Convention, incidentally, had a fence, a wall around the convention center in Philadelphia that was 8 feet tall. So they talk about
Not
the
building
wall
fences.
that they want to build in Mexico by Donald Trump, and they put their wall around that. And the thousands of protesters and others that are out in the street protesting the Democratic Convention. And then that one, when they had the roll call and all of that, they had a major walkout of people that just got up and left the convention hall that were Bernie Sanders supporters, and because they never got the respect or anything else, and they had continued from the very outset to sabotage his campaign. But if you look at the statistics, and I've listened to them, and I've talked to a number of business women, and they've all said that the number of women graduating from college now exceeds men. There are more women in the workforce now than there are men. There are more women running small businesses and in some of the large corporations now. So the old thing about women being ostracized and out of society is a myth that they're trying to project, but doesn't exist anymore. So the large number of women who are anti-Hillary now about some of the rhetoric that she's coming off with will accrue to that. There's a tremendous number of things going on. One of the ladies that was a delegate there at the convention is Jill Stein, and she is the candidate now for the Green Party. And the Green Party will be siphoning off a large number of votes, and a lot of the Sanders voters are now going over to her camp.
Oh, really?
So we've got that, and you got a Libertarian candidate with Johnson, and then this. So the outcome in November is very much in doubt. And there were a lot of people that really don't care that much for Trump, but they hate Hillary. So a lot of them say, well, then regardless of that, I'm going to have to vote for him.
Yeah.
So you've got all of those things going, and then it's a very volatile and very tenuously balanced situation.
Well, I saw that the Florida delegation to the Democrat convention had a rally for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and there were so many Sanders people there that they more or less booed her off.
She got off the stage.
The stage, and she was scheduled to speak at the Democratic convention, but because she had been booed off the stage, I think they dropped her off of the schedule.
Well, they did, and at the same time, she was, as the chairman, was to strike the gavel to open it and also to close it, and the last minute she opted out of that.
Well, they were worried because she was basically not completely honest with the primaries.
Exactly.
And was backing Hillary instead, and was trying to keep Bernie Sanders from getting a chance. And then Hillary turns right around and hires her kind of rewards her for being unfair.
She was always in Hillary's camp.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It was nothing unusual. That was expected that she would be taken care of.
Okay, then the other thing that really shocked me about the Democratic convention was that they had basically a pro-Black Lives Matter program without giving the police and law and order a chance to give their side.
Law and order was never mentioned, except that they took the mothers and widows of blacks who had been killed by police now on the program.
Yeah.
Hillary Clinton isn't afraid to say that Black Lives matter. The majority of police officers are good people doing a good job. And we're also going to keep using our voices and our votes to support leaders like Hillary Clinton.
Nothing about the law enforcement officers and what they've done and the number of hundreds of them that have been killed in the line of duty. The interesting thing when you mentioned the fact that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had been removed and then she voluntarily left and would not even open the convention or close it, and the person they chose to do it was the mayor of Baltimore, the black woman.
Oh, yeah.
The black woman who wanted to send to prison every one of the policemen that were.
Oh, yeah, I remember her, yeah.
And the interesting thing is the courts have now ruled that every single one of those 6 men, those 6 policemen in Baltimore have been exonerated.
Yeah.
There'll be no charges against any of them.
Well, it almost gives the impression that the Democrat Party is against the police. That was the take-home message I got.
Well, this was the thing, again, that where they were trying and doing everything in their power to maintain and create and increase the black vote in November. So by doing these kind of activities and being that like they're on their side and the Black Lives Matter and Hands Up and all the things are complete fraud, and the Black Lives Matter, and we talked about them before, their socialist background. In fact, they were financed and started by the Communist Party USA.
Yeah.
And all
George
of those
Soros and these guys.
Well, Soros was the mentor for both Obama and Hillary. Hillary met with him several times, and they talked about things and how to go through it. He was the first community organizer and created that atmosphere of community organizer. And the funny thing was he did his doctorate on Al Capone. He spent a lot of time with Al Capone's chief henchman, Frank Nitti, and learned how the con artists and others in the Capone organization worked. And that was part of what he incorporated into his book, Rules for Radicals.
Yeah. Now, this guy, D'Souza, it starts off with him in jail because Obama and his friends had him put in jail for giving a little too much to a candidate.
Well, yeah, he had produced a movie that was very, very critical of the Obama administration. And in the aftermath, he had a friend that he made that was running for office that he knew, and he made an anonymous contribution of $2,000. And for that, he was sentenced to a federal prison. And again, there was no fraud, no anything else. And most of the campaign contributions that are in it, that are in large numbers, is in order to gain some kind of benefit back in return for the contribution, some political payoff. But in this case, the fact that it was anonymous, the person didn't even know who the money came from. And again, it was a punishment for a man who had spoken out and told the truth about what was going on.
Well, it's amazing how divided the Democratic Party is. And, Bernie Sanders almost got as much support as Hillary.
Exactly. Had it not been for the locked-in votes that were already there pre-convention, he could have very easily won the nomination. And they had to stop that at all costs, because that's not the agenda that they want to promote. And it's, I don't know where we're going to go from here, but between now and November is going to be some interesting comments and things that we have to be able to to look through and understand what they're saying and the motivation behind it, and
Yeah.
not be
Yeah.
distracted and create an atmosphere where you don't know what's going on. So it's important to keep abreast of things, to understand, and to reach out and find the truth.
Well, Ed, this movie, this DVD, is only about 30 minutes long, 29 minutes long. And I think this does more to explain the political process and what's involved. It seems to me that you got two sides. One side is the people that are promoting prosperity for everyone and freedom for everyone. And on the other hand, you have people that are just pushing big government and do away with prosperity, do away with freedom, just have a big government run by the elitists.
Right.
And I think this DVD by Congressman Bob McEwen explains that very well. And we'd like to give you a free copy of this if you call our number, 893-2444. You can call that number right now, and we'll send you this DVD. It says Politics as Easy as Pie.
Yeah, Bob breaks it down, and the reason he uses the word pie is that because everything breaks down to three things: politics, integrity, and economics.
Right, right.
And with that, the three of them combined is what made America what it is today, the greatest nation in the history of the world.
Right.
And unless we get back to those fundamentals, that we'll no longer be the great America.
Yeah, so give us a call right now, 893-2444, and we'll get this out to you right away. And there's a phone number on that. If you call that phone number, we'll send you more and more and more, and they're all free, because we feel that America is at a tipping point. If we don't get our freedom and rights back, we're going to lose everything.
One of the things that was done very early on was the breakdown of education.
Yeah.
And the fact that in the recent statistics that the state made of Jefferson County, Kentucky, was very alarming.
Yes.
That only 30-40% of the children can read. Less than that, 17% can do mathematics.
Yeah.
Math. And it's a very critical thing, and it's a breakdown. And the children have no history, no background, no anything, and when I was in school, we used to have what we call shop. You could take woodworking, metalwork, all that. It doesn't exist anymore.
They did away with all that.
They did completely. There was none of that left, and there was physical education, everything else that no longer exists in the system. And these were the things that led children to feel an adaptation to things like electricity, plumbing, woodworking, cabinet making, and all those. And those are jobs right now that are going begging. So you get an education, you go to college, and you come out with a degree in something that has no marketable value. And then you can end up with it as a job as a teacher at $30,000 a year, or you can become a machinist with a beginning salary of $70,000 and up. And this is the same thing with electricians and others that are in short supply, and nobody has the qualifications or training to fill those jobs. So we talk about jobs, but there's nobody qualified.
This election has a lot of implications.
Exactly.
Now, this is another thing I came across on the internet. This is from Breitbart, and the same material is in another website called Act for America with Bridget Gabriel, and they're saying that Hillary's vice presidential pick, Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, is tied in with the radical Muslims. So that's kind of shocking, too.
Well, these are the things that are underground and the media will never report.
Because
they're on her side to start with. And that was the thing that they used back in the 60s when they decided that their protests or sit-ins and all that wasn't working, that we're going to have to work from the inside.
Yeah.
We want you to become journalists. We want you to become politicians. We want you to become lawyers, judges, and professors. And all of those slots have been filled by that type of person. And there's nothing out in the traditional sense of where you would go for information. And you're going to have to get it from sources like the rest of the news and other things, and some of the churches. One of the things that Trump said was he was going to repeal that act that fined a church for using politics in their name. And to show you an example, was in California, a couple were fined $300 for praying at home. And,
wow.
Yeah, Chuck and Stephanie Forum were fined $300 in order to stop holding regular Bible studies at their home. And they also faced an additional charge of $500 per meeting, that if they want to continue to have a little prayer meeting in their home with friends and neighbors. So these, again, was a progressive Democratic administration that ordered this fine and all of these things. And it's a constant attack against Christianity that goes back for several years. And this is one of the things that Trump said he was going to repeal, is the fact that a minister cannot say anything about politics from a pulpit.
He's going to get freedom of speech back to the pastors.
Exactly.
Wow. That's really important.
Well, this is the thing that frightened a lot of them, and they're threatened constantly. And also, there was a number of liberals that went into the ministry. It's a serious thing. I never will forget, as a young man, there was a Presbyterian seminary that was on 2nd and Broadway. It was the original one. And there was a young man who was an avowed communist that was attending that, and it was asked by a reporter, why would you as a communist want to become a minister? And he said, what better place to preach communism than from the pulpit? And that was a very frightening thing for me to think at that particular point that was actually happening, and that the Presbyterian Church would allow that person to become a minister. So that's something else we have to be cautious about, and inform our ministers and talk to people and get involved in it at every level.
Absolutely. This election, a lot of people think this is the most important election in our lifetime.
Completely. And there was 29 other great civilizations that were buried in the past, and not a single one of them was destroyed from the outside.
Detroit, Michigan used to be the most wealthy city in the world. And then the left-wingers came in and raised the taxes, raised all kinds of regulations. And when they got through, Detroit, Michigan is now the poorest city in North America. And it's all because of the same programs that are being pushed today.
Exactly.
And these programs have never worked. Never worked. They're not working now, and they never will work, but they're still pushing them today.
Exactly.
And they're going to have a utopia. Oh, we're going to solve everybody's problems. But really, they're just creating problems.
And this is something that every one of the administrations in Detroit, since the inception of the breakdown, have been Democratic all the way through.
Absolutely.
And it's not a question of Republican versus Democrat. It's the reality of American traditional values versus socialism. Margaret Thatcher had made the statement that's pretty well summarized that you can do that as long as until you run out of other people's money.
Right.
And this is where we are. And this is where I was thinking about the fact that this indebtedness, we have unfunded liability. The state of Kentucky now is number 2
in the nation.
Only behind Illinois in bonded and other indebtedness that is unsustainable. And the debt that Kentucky faces is astronomical.
Well, the same programs that destroyed Detroit, Michigan are being used to destroy Louisville, Kentucky,
right,
and the state and the whole nation,
right,
by raising taxes more and more till the people can't afford to pay the taxes on their house, and they just move out of town.
And this is another thing too, and then you're starting to find people that are leaving the state, people with money
Yeah.
moving to places, even like to Tennessee with no income tax and other things, and other taxes are low. And one we're facing too is a major problem that is even more insidious, and that is the influx of immigrants. The impact that we're having on our school system. I've forgotten exactly how many different languages are spoken in Jefferson County the teachers cannot cope with. The breakdown of that, the cost of that, the cost of the social programs, the cost of the medical, all of those things that are being furnished to these immigrants that are costing the taxpayer millions and millions of dollars.
And not only that, a lot of those people are terrorists that are coming in.
Exactly.
Mixed in with the immigrants. And then when they come to put out to help Christian people that are having their heads cut off and burned alive and everything else, oh no, we don't want any Christians coming into our country, just radical Muslims.
Right. And this is another problem, even if you did have a couple of Christians come in, they were afraid to even tell they're Christians because they'd be killed by the Muslims that they're involved with. So all of those things are contributing to the overall problem. And again, the cost of maintaining this large number of immigrants that have no resources, nothing but the clothes on their back, and then that's being furnished, housing is being furnished, all of this, medical, jobs, all that kind of thing is being furnished at our expense. And it's not something that you have to look at in terms of compassion and humanitarian aid.
Right.
It's another problem that's being part of the breakdown of the United States.
Well, the people that deserve the most compassion are the Christians whose children are being killed, their heads cutting off, and Obama won't do a thing for them.
And the recent example is the priest in France that was beheaded as he was performing Mass in a Catholic church by a 19-year-old who was mad because he wasn't allowed to go to Syria to train with ISIS, so he performed his own. And the thing is, he'd been arrested twice. He was on his ankle a tracking device, but the tracking device wasn't working that day because they don't track people during the daytime. And it's all of these breakdowns in the civil aspect of law enforcement and others is a major problem. And these are the things that young people who are frustrated, can't find jobs and everything else, look to Islam as the answer, a caliphate where they'll be taken care of.
Thank Ed Holloway, State Representative, and God bless you, and tune in again next week for the rest of the news.
Take it,